Everybody, I'm Sue, as you know, and I live in Austria with my family, my husband and my my youngest son, and our two dogs, Charlie and Layla. But where it all began is in 2013 when we got Charlie. Now, in between those times, I actually trained to become a professional dog trainer and behavior therapist, so I am that. But we got Charlie in 2013. I'd had a lot of dog experience before that, and other animals, of course. But yeah, 2013, we were living in the UK and we decided to adopt a dog into our family. It was a time when we were doing a lot of walking, hiking, enjoying the outdoors as a family, and we just thought that it was time again for us to get another dog who could enjoy those activities. A dog that could go everywhere with us, you know, do action activities with us and go everywhere with us. So we scanned the different rescue centers and we found Charlie. And Charlie came home with us on the first day. I've had rescues before, so I knew, you know, the first kind of few weeks was a very different dog. But slowly, right from the beginning, we knew that he was dead nervous. I mean, the whole way back from the rescue center, he drooled and vomited the whole way back. So I knew that he had a problem with cars, traveling in the car, and obviously was very frightened at the whole new experience. So it soon became apparent that he was petrified of traffic. He had been hit by a truck. That's why they found him in the first place, brought him to the rescue center. So, but he was petrified of all traffic. So we lived in a small little suburb, and we would, as I went sort of out the garden gate, it didn't matter what, there wasn't big trucks and things, but any traffic, he would just lie down flat, wouldn't move. Or eventually, if I coaxed him with treats and all sorts of things, we could get him moving, but he would just hug the pavement and just pull me, you know, just pull as fast as as hard as he could to get as quick as he could to any other place, any place where he could hide, basically. So that was pretty much of a disaster. And then I started taking him out on the country sort of lanes and roads where we weren't going to have traffic and people and cars and children and things he wasn't used to. But sadly, when I say sadly, came as a bit of a shock to us that he chased anything and everything that he could possibly see. He was very, very movement sensitive, highly aroused when we were out and about, totally disconnected from me. And he was just in chase mode the entire time. So he was just finding anything he could chase, or he had his nose literally stuck to the ground, doing a vacuum maneuver, as I used to call it, just finding any scent that he could follow and then chase. And he literally forgot that I was on the end of the leash. So we were always on a long line, and he would just literally plow me through hedgerows, pull me through rivers, over rocks. He didn't care. He didn't even know that I was on the other end of the leash. It was just, I didn't exist. So we used to come home in tears every day, me covered in mud and not knowing what to do. So obviously we did try. I mean, stupidly, we tried to take him on our weekend activities with us, on our walks, on our hikes, on our adventures and our visits to other towns. It was a disaster. The family, we started arguing about it every time, because it was always, everything had to be disrupted and changed and etc., because Charlie was in a panic, and Charlie couldn't stay in the car, and Charlie couldn't come out the car, and Charlie couldn't go here, and Charlie couldn't do this. So it became a bit of a family breakdown. So what was meant to be our dream dog became kind of the thorn that tore us all apart as a family, really. So yeah, that's where we began. Shall I go to turning point, Kathy?
Not the best beginning ever. Yeah, and then so it was a struggle, and it just was getting worse. Your family was being torn apart. It came down to no one else would even take him out for walks because he was so unmanageable. And so it was left to you, and remember you telling us that you're like, both of your shoulders were like ripped out and damaged. Yeah. And then finally one day, I guess things sort of came to a head, huh?
Yeah. But before I go to the head, just in the interim, just so that you know, I was obviously training him from home. I was taking him to training classes. He actually got his Canine Good Companion certificate in a couple of weeks. I mean, he was brilliant. Clicker training, he was an absolute star. He took to it like a dream, and in class he was brilliant. He absolutely nailed everything. But it was outside, it was real life that he couldn't cope with. And I even got in a private trainer who helped me from home. We helped with several different exercises. We tried to stop him pulling. We tried every training trick in the book to help him to stop pulling on the leash. All positive. I never went into the aversive methods, but I tried everything in the book to stop him from pulling on the leash, and we just couldn't. We could get him to a certain it's called at a certain level of pulling, but never ever were we able to control it. Except with one thing, which was also not a foolproof thing, but we learned I turned him into a ball junkie. I trained him with a ball that he could not chase that, he could chase this. And so I turned him into a ball junkie, and our ball went everywhere with us and became my go-to tool. To the moment he was disconnected, I would use the ball. The moment he was ready to chase something, I would use the ball. The moment he was pulling on the leash, I would use the ball. So that became my go-to tool, and I thought this is the way it was going to be. It was just going to be that we would do everything, but I had to have this ball with me. But what we were doing was just swapping one high arousal activity for another high arousal activity. It wasn't actually changing anything. He just became more and more crazed, shall I say. Yeah, so that's where we ended up. Until one fine day, we were out in the country, we were going for a walk. I had him on the long lead, and then we had a kind of a ritual that going towards back to the car, I would always let him run the last sort of 10, 20, 100 meters back to the car if all was safe, because I knew he would jump straight into the car and we could just go home from there. And so that was our normal routine, and we did it, and I checked left and right. I couldn't see anything, dropped the leash, and I said, off you go back to the car. And he started charging back to the car. And all of a sudden he stopped in his tracks, turned right, put his feet up over a small stone wall. And I couldn't see anything on the other side, but he clearly could smell them. And there was obviously a herd of sheep way back that he could see way back in that field. And all he did was he just took a flying leap over the wall, heading straight towards the sheep. But what he didn't realize was there was a 6-foot drop on the other side of the wall, straight down, and he just tumbled. He just did a head over heels and tumbled straight down. And I just stood there in absolute shock. And I actually thought he had broken legs. I thought he was dead. I thought he was gone. Leant over the wall, saw him, screamed to him, and he just jumped up and went flat out in a flat chase straight after the sheep. I mean, he didn't even feel anything, went straight out after the sheep, chased the sheep, did his thing, and I just knew that I was in deep, deep trouble, because if, you know, in the UK, and I'm sure it's in many places, if a farmer comes out and sees your dog chasing sheep and does damage to them, he can shoot to kill. That's just it. It's just a law, and I knew that I was in deep, deep trouble, because if a farmer came out at that moment, he could have me, no problem. He could have my dog, and he could have me up for whatever charges, no problem. And I just freaked, and I didn't know what to do. So I actually jumped over the wall myself, down the 6-foot drop, got down there, and I was trying to find a way out for him to get him out of this field, and I couldn't find a way out. Eventually pulled him over the 6-foot wall, grip, superhuman strength, off I went, and I just literally threw him into the car. Got home, and I said, that's it. I was finished. I was shaking. I was a nervous wreck. I was in shock. I was in absolute shock. And I just said to him, that's it, buddy. You're going back to the rescue center. You've ruined my life. You're ruining my family. I can't do this anymore. It's enough. I can't take this anymore. And I got home with full intention of sending him back to the center. I got home, I went through the papers to find the telephone number for the rescue center. And as I opened it, I saw the statement that I had made when I picked him up. And it just said that I had filled in my name, Sue Mimm, promised to give Charlie a forever loving home. And it just hit me, and I just thought, you know, how can I do this to this poor dog? How can I send him back who would ever want him? Who's ever going to take him? I was the one who promised. I was the one who said, I'll take him and I'll help him. I'll do something. And now here I am just giving up on him and going to make him somebody else's problem. And I just couldn't do it. It broke my heart. And I started crying. I was on the kitchen floor and I just started crying, and he came over to me and he put his head in my chest, and he used to do that. He used to really just shove his head against my chest really, really hard, as if he was like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And I just said, I'm so sorry too. And that was the day that I made the vow that it doesn't matter whatever it took, I would find a way to help him, to help us.
Yeah. That's quite an emotional story, Sue. And so why don't we fast forward? So you ultimately, in your searches, found me and found Brilliant Partners Academy, and you went to work. But I want you to share some of the highlights of what really made a difference for you and Charlie and your family. But tell us about how life is, how it's been for quite a long time, right? Like a year and a half, 2 years, I don't know.
But I would say about a year and a half, 2 years now.
Yeah, it's completely different.
It's very different, very, very different. We literally do go anywhere and everywhere together. He's my sidekick together with Layla, my other dog. And we have a brilliant life. A couple of years ago, I had a dream that I would be able to that we as a family would be able to go camping, a 6-week trip in a camper van. Well, it wasn't quite 6 weeks, we did 3 weeks, but it was 3 weeks up to Scotland. We left from Austria, we drove all the way through the UK up to Scotland for 3 weeks. We camped, we didn't spend longer, I don't think, in one place than 2 nights. We went to Glasgow, we went to Edinburgh, so we were in the cities as well. We went up to the Highlands. We did thousands of miles with thousands of different people, with sheep everywhere, with cities, you name it. And the dogs were with us the whole time, and they were absolutely brilliant. And we did it. We lived the dream, and it was absolutely, beyond words. It was fantastic. We're 99% off leash most of the time. Luckily, in our area, we can be. So 99% we're off leash, except where, there's leash laws that we have to be on leash. I trust him 100%. He's really good. He stays near me. He wants to be with me. We don't have balls anymore. But he loves to interact with me, and we still play. I still throw a stick for him every now and then. We still have fun, but it's he's not that crazed, obsessed dog anymore. He's just my partner. He's a brilliant partner.
It's beautiful.
So that's where we are now.
Yeah, and
we get there.
It's pretty impressive, I mean, he's, to see you walking on your trails, and he's just, with you. You don't even have to, really ask him, unless you're asking him to move over to let people and dogs and whatever pass you by, and he just it's lovely. So one question that I would imagine that our viewers are wondering is, well, Sue, how did you get him off of the ball obsession, right? Because I'm sure a lot of our folks are in that position where the dogs are either like toy obsessed or game obsessed or food obsessed, so depending on what you're using as a means to keep your dog with you in distracting environments, food or playing with toys. I mean, it seems impossible to go from that, like if I don't have this, my dog is uncontrollable, right? To where you are now. How did you do that?
It wasn't overnight. I have to be honest with you. With the toys, it wasn't overnight. We did the Safe, Calm, and Happy protocol, and I'll just add there as well that it took me a long time to really do the Safe, Calm, and Happy protocol. Why? Because we are still conditioned to believe that Charlie is a Border Collie Springer Spaniel cross. He's a high energy dog. He is motivated by action. And so we believe, and we're conditioned to believe, that these kind of dogs need that. They need that activity. They need to be trained. They need to be on cue all the time. They need to be told what to do. Yeah, because they're working dogs, you know, so we need to give them jobs. And yes, we do need to give them jobs, but we're giving them often the wrong kind of jobs, you know, that high arousal. So it took me a long time before I could really understand what that meant. What it meant for, as far as chasing things, for instance, in the forest, etc. We did have to stay away from forest areas for at least 2 seasons. It was 2.5 seasons we stayed away. We did not go there anymore. So literally doing those things, it's always difficult, but it's something you have to come to terms with, people. You have to do it. Okay, so ball. We did, at first I tried to take him off cold turkey. So we just hit all balls. We took everything away from him, and he literally fell apart. He literally fell apart because he didn't have that crutch. He didn't have that dopamine fix, that adrenaline fix every day. So it was, the first couple of days were horrendous. I tried to do a lot of hands-on touch, and we tried to do, you know, with essential oils, etc., etc. But those first few days, nothing helped until I could really understand what an addiction was, you know, that he really was addicted to that adrenaline and that dopamine fix. So we had to try and slowly substitute it with something else. So what I would do is I would bring out a ball, but it was always, you know, the two of us together, and instead of throwing it, I would just tell him that his ball is amazing. So he just used to pick it up in his mouth and chew it and run around with it, but I never threw it for him. He would, every time he came to me, I would say, oh, that is such an awesome ball, and it's so great, and you're beautiful. But I was connecting with him, not his ball. I wasn't interacting with him with the ball, but at the same time I wasn't, because the frustration was just too big if I took it away altogether. So that's how we slowly transitioned. We slowly transitioned by just allowing it some time of the day, but not thrown. And it was a case of every time he had it, I would love on him with the ball. I would really tell him how awesome he was, how great he was. We would do things together, but the ball was there, but it wasn't the focus anymore. It didn't become the focus anymore. So,
right. Yeah. And now that worked. So that process was effective, not as a standalone, but because of all the protocols, right? So not to we don't want anyone to misunderstand, because we're culturally conditioned to think about fixing isolated things, right? Mm-hmm. It would be easy for someone to say, oh, I'm going to try that with my dog.
That doesn't help alone. That won't.
Right. So why don't you tell us some of the things that you implemented that you feel were, you know, that had like the biggest, I mean, everything is synergistic, but maybe just pull out some of the things that you feel had a bigger impact on your life with Charlie.
Okay, so the Safe, Calm and Happy protocol, 100%. We had to stick to that. Again, it meant, for instance, going on our walks. We didn't go in the neighborhood anymore. It meant me getting into my car and driving 10 minutes down the road. And again, you know, for most people here, that's absolutely ludicrousy, that I'm surrounded by forests and mountains on the back of my property, and I'm getting into my car and I'm driving somewhere boring. In 10 minutes a day. I mean, it was, people just did not get that. They didn't understand that. So that was, but it worked. Why? Because we were in an area where there was little or to no distraction, and we could start to enjoy the walk together. Because again, one of the things that is true for me, and I'm sure it's true for so many people, why do you walk your dog? And people say, oh, well, I love to get out in nature and I like having a walking companion and. But how often is it really just an excuse for exercising your dog? Are you really connected on walks? Are you really with your dog on walks? Or is it a case of just, I know my dog's getting done, I can disconnect. I can have my thoughts, I can have my cell phone, I can, even if you're connecting with nature, that's also great, but you're also disconnecting with your dog. And it's an excuse that you're giving your dog the exercise, but it's not actually, it's not an activity you're doing together. So I learned to do my walks together with my dogs. That was our time together where we're completely learning to be together. Taking interest in his little sniffles and what he was doing, and sitting on the grass and doing nothing, sitting on a bench and just watching them and laughing with them, and those kind of things, those, as opposed to just getting on your route and doing your route and going. So that was part of it. So there was the safe, calm, and happy protocol. We started doing the name game, obviously, on our walks. We started playing hide and seek on our walks. We started doing the dance invitation on walks. We started doing a few steps of the walking partners dance, but generally we did that before we left. We did it before at home. We would start our connection at home before we left. I would start with my mindset, and my mindset would actually dictate where we were going to go today, or for how long we were going to walk today. Was it going to be a 10-minute walk down at the river, or was it going to be a 5-minute walk around here to quickly go and potty and come back and do something else at home, because perhaps I was in a stressed mood, or perhaps we'd had an encounter the day before that wasn't great and we weren't in a safe, calm, and happy place. So it was always dependent on how I was feeling, how Charlie was feeling, and then I would decide where we were going to walk, and I would decide if a walk at all was going to be on the cards. And practicing that connecting before we left the house. So we would do the name game, we would do the walking partners dance in our garden, and we would I would practice staying present with my dogs and being fully connected, because that is such a key thing. If you can just learn to lock in to your dog when you're out and about. To me, it's like almost like a wave that goes around me now, because we're in our own little bubble. We're doing our own thing. It's actually irrelevant what's out there. It's like a sort of a wave that goes around you as you roll, and we walk on. And that is such a brilliant key skill, I think, to learn, that attentive responsiveness, that attention, because once you are connected and attentive to your dogs will give you the same.
Love that.
Yeah, that was a key skill.
Yeah, one thing that I think would be really helpful, for certainly for our BPs, but for everyone, is if you could remember when you sort of restarted with BPA, with that new commitment, the thing that I think would be really helpful is, can you tell us what was missing? Like, you thought you were committed to the partnership lifestyle, but there was a couple of important things missing. And then, you had the epiphany, and that's when things really turned around for you and Charlie. But what were those things that were missing after you had that epiphany? I think it would really help everyone. Because you don't know what you don't know, you know what I mean? But if others can get the benefit of that, I think it'll be really helpful. Can you remember that? I mean, it was a while ago.
And it was a long time ago. But I do remember, one of the biggest ones, and I know the girls said this yesterday, and it's spot on, is learning to listen, to truly listen. Because I was still convinced that I wasn't trying to fix my dog. I was convinced that I had got past that, and that, I was still convinced that I wasn't trying to fix my dog. That's what I thought. But what I was doing, and it was a big aha moment for me, is that I wasn't really listening. What does that mean by not really listening? There was a route we used to take, for instance, and it was walking past a house that had dogs, and these dogs would always run to the fence and they would bark, but they never ever, these particular dogs never came out, they never did anything, nothing ever happened. But Charlie would hug the fence again on the other side of the road and freak out every time we walked past. And I would do I would do the walking partners dance, I would do everything, and still I was getting this, and my desperate question was, why? Why doesn't he trust me? Why doesn't he feel safe here? Why doesn't he feel, after all we've done, worked together, why doesn't he feel that trust and that safety with me? And Kathy used to tell me over and over again, why are you putting him in that situation? Why are you going there? And it's like, well, nothing ever happens there. You know, it's not like they're going to rush out and hurt him or do anything. But I wasn't listening. It was irrelevant to him whether they were going to come out or not. He was not feeling safe, and I was not honoring that. I was not really honoring what his anxiety really meant. And sadly, it took my son, who also at the same time, he also has anxiety. And he came to me the one day, and I was trying to convince him that we'll take baby steps to getting to go to some function. He has social anxiety. And I was trying to get baby steps, and he said, you don't get it, Mom. You just don't get it. I don't want to go there. I don't want to learn baby steps. I'm not ready for that. I don't want to. And it was suddenly like, aha, okay, I get it. Kathy's been telling me, my son is telling me, my dog is telling me. It's their perspective. It is literally seeing it and accepting it from somebody else's perspective, regardless of what you feel in that situation. And once I could do that, once I turned that into, I get you, how can I support you? That was when, the magic really started to happen, because I took him seriously. Took him seriously.
So important. And and it's not that our intention isn't right or good. It's not that we're not doing the things, but it's like we have to step through different layers or different doorways, and we don't know till we know, right? And when we know better, we do better. I mean, so your story really illustrated that, because from that, like, it was like someone turned on the light switch, right? From dark room to the light switch. And from that moment on, it was like, you were still sort of semi-struggling with Charlie a little bit. Like, it was a lot better and you were so happy, but you were just there. Like, it was just going along. Well, this is way better, and I guess this is how it's going to be, right?
Yeah.
But then once you had that mindset shift, everything changed. And all of a sudden you had, like, it seemed like all of a sudden you had this dog that you could take anywhere, on leash, off leash, it didn't matter. And he was with you and you were with him, and nothing else mattered. Like, it seemed, I know it wasn't, but it seemed like it was overnight. But it was a dramatic shift that was very clearly evident in Charlie's response.
Yeah,
right? I mean, he responded so in such a big way to that.
Yeah, it was that at the heart connections, we started doing the heart connections for real then. And I literally told him every single day that I accepted him 100% for who he was, and that I would never ever try to fix him or change him. And I actually I developed a new kind of love for him, because I saw him in a completely different light. Instead of seeing him as a difficult dog, I suddenly saw him as my he was my joy, my everyday joy, because I suddenly realized, as soon as I could see it from a different perspective, I saw his energy as pure joy, as opposed to energy as pure difficulty. It was suddenly joy, and I actually saw the delight in him and the delight that he does everything with, and I was able to really embrace that, enjoy that, and love him for that. So that really changed our relationship.